In this module, we're going to begin by taking a quick trip back in time to review some of the ways that communication has been conceptualized by scholars since communication emerged as a separate academic discipline back in the 1940s. So early communication scholars tended to think in a very linear fashion when they were trying to conceptualize what happens when two people engage in a communication exchange. This first model of communication was known as the linear or transmission model of communication. In this model, you can see that a sender transmits a message to a receiver through communication channels. Communication channels can include everything from the type of auditory channel involved in a face-to-face conversation all the way to a mediated channel, such as the one I'm using to deliver this message to you today. Early communication scholars did recognize that there was also some contextual stuff going on, so they added the element of noise to the model. In this model, noise represents anything that can interfere with the delivery of the message. So noise includes not only audible sounds, such as the soundtrack that's running behind the lecture today, or it can include psychological distractions, perhaps other thoughts you may be having while you're also trying to listen to this video. Noise can also include physiological distractions, such as the kind of distraction that might occur, for example, if you're feeling hungry because you haven't eaten yet today. So all of these things can prevent you from receiving the message that I'm sending in quite the way that I intended it. The linear model has one major problem, though. It assumes that all communication is simply a process of one-way message transmission. And most of us intuitively know that that's not really the case. So a second model of communication was soon proposed. Scholars referred to this model as the transactional model of communication. In this particular version of the model, communication is conceptualized as a two-way rather than one-way process of information exchange. Now you'll notice that in this model we still have senders and receivers, but in this case both communicators play both roles. We still have messages, but in this model, messages travel in both directions. We still have communication traveling in channels, that hasn't really changed, and we still have noise. But this model also has a bit of additional complexity because the model recognizes that individuals also bring their own backgrounds, presuppositions, and experiences along with them into communication exchanges. So these models can be helpful in helping us to conceptualize what happens during communication, but all of the models are still missing something important, and that is the conceptualization of the influence of the broader social context in which communication takes place. So this leads us to a completely different way of thinking about communication theory, one that does not address the flow of information, but rather it addresses how people use the language to construct or build meaning together. And the theory that addresses this is called social construction theory, and it was developed by social theorist Alfred Schutz, who argued that there is no such thing really as objective reality, because information has different meanings for different individuals based on each individual's past experiences and current social position. For social constructionists, meaning is something that develops as multiple individuals interpret information together in social settings, a condition that we refer to as intersubjectivity. This is very different from those early communication theories that focused only on communication as flow. In discourse theory, a social construct is any phenomenon that has been constructed, if you will, in a particular way by participants in a particular culture or social group. This means that the same phenomenon can have more than one meaning depending upon which social group is using it. Some social constructs are metaphysical. That is, they are real items that have been given a particular socially agreed upon value. Money is a great example of a social construct. There's no particular value in the little round pieces of metal and little paper rectangles that we use as our primary medium of exchange. In fact, people in other times and places have exchanged all sorts of things. In ancient Siberia, Mongolia, Tibet, and China, for example, cakes of compressed tea resembling mud bricks circulated the way we circulate money today. In Africa, Southeast Asia, even in North America, seashells have often served as a medium of exchange. Nevertheless, in 21st century America, none of us would turn down if somebody offered us a gift of cash, because for us, the paper and the coins are understood to have real value. Not all social constructs are physical, however. Social scientists now recognize that race is the social construct. We know that there is no physical or biological basis for many of the social notions that we hold of racial difference. Yet, many people behave as if all individuals who share a particular skin tone or facial features are fundamentally the same and, at the same time, fundamentally different from all those with a different skin tone or different facial features. We do the same thing with concepts like gender, assuming, for example, that gender roles are inherent rather than products of social forces. Some scholars, including communications scholar Stanley Dietz, have even argued that science itself is a social construct. As you will see in our readings this week, different groups of people in society have very different understandings about what science is, about what science means, and about the meaning of individual scientific discoveries. The bottom line in discourse theory is the notion that social constructs like race, gender, money, or even science may only exist because people behave as if they exist. Try to wrap your head around that one. Anyway, as you read this week, keep in mind that communication is, in fact, a transmission of ideas and an exchange of ideas, but it's also much more. Communication is a means of creating shared meaning and of negotiating meaning in society. Now, let's turn to this week's theoretical readings.